Hey everyone, and welcome back to 2023. I know I am starting a little bit late this year, later than all of you who are back in the classroom already, but I've been super busy over the last few weeks. I've ran the Effective Teaching Conference, the very first conference that I've run. I've had some fantastic teachers. In fact, this episode, I'm actually going to just talk a little bit about some of the key things that I learned throughout this conference. There's probably 1,000 of them. I'm just trying to pick out a couple. But I've absolutely loved it. If you want to go and check out what I'm talking about, if you missed it or you didn't get to watch any of the stuff live and when you signed up or whatever, you can still purchase access to the recordings. Just head over to teacherspd.net/conference and it'll have all the information there about who was involved, who presented, what they presented on, and we'll also have a button there that you can click to get access to the recordings from that conference. But that conference, I'm going to say, it was absolutely amazing to me. When I sat down last year and sent out my first couple of emails to a few presenters to find out if they would be willing to present, all the presenters came and presented for free so that I could keep the price as cheap as possible. And it was absolutely fantastic. So we had some of the biggest names that I know of in education. We had John Hattie, who, if you don't know about John Hattie and his effect sizes, he's one of the biggest influences on education around the world. Some will say for good, some will say for bad. But when you actually talk to Hattie, he actually has a really good understanding of all that and intertwining it all. And he gets how it all works in reality, as well as how people are applying things that he talks about incorrectly and all that kind of stuff. We had John Larmer come, who was one of the founders of the Buck Institute, or PBL Works, I think it's what it might be called now. Had McTighe come and talk about deeper learning and helping our students do that. And he's the guy who wrote Understanding by Design with Grant Wiggins, a fantastic book. And it's on my must reads for anyone who is a teacher. If you have not read Understanding by Design, I will highly encourage you to go and get that book and to spend some time reading through it. It is a fantastic book that will really help set you up for really quality teaching for the rest of your career. We also had Suzie Boss, who was part of the gold standard for PBL stuff. Had Kasey Bell, who is like the guru on all things like Google and education. Had so many others. I don't want to list all of them because that would be a pretty boring episode, but there were some amazing presenters, and it was just fantastic to be able to sit in on each of these sessions, to see the chat going off as the people who attended live were just asking questions and helping each other and sharing resources. It was absolutely amazing. I love being part of a community that is like this. So some of the things that I absolutely loved, I'm just going to share maybe 5 key things that I learned from this conference. Number one, it was on day one, Giffen, I think it's Giffen, gave us a presentation on sketchnoting 101. And I've always been interested in sketchnoting. I've always found it fascinating from the outside, but to sit down and listen to her and to actually do some sketchnoting with her throughout that session was absolutely amazing. And to hear her talk about the science behind it as well, and how by putting images with the words and you kind of put them close together and stuff like that, it actually helps us and helps our students to remember what they're learning. And so as we're reading books, or as we're listening to presenters, or listening to podcasts, or watching videos, whatever you're doing, creating a sketch note is actually a really fantastic way for you to solidify things in your memory that you want to recall later. And so she was amazing. And I was amazed to see how easy it was to create a sketch note, because it doesn't have to be a great drawing. It's not about the art. It's about the notes. And for it to be about the notes and to create a really cool little sketch that just captures things and has words with it, I think is amazing. It really helps with remembering what you've been learning. Now, day one was amazing. We had a few other really great presenters as well. I loved the stuff on AI. It might be because I'm a bit of a tech geek, but I loved learning about ChatGPT. I then played with it all week and used it in my session that I ran at the end of the week. ChatGPT and other AI systems, I know that generally for educators, they can be quite scary. with seeing students use these things for their assessments and all that kind of stuff as they submit things. But for me, I also see them as a fantastic opportunity for us as teachers to be able to save some time by using these kinds of tools ourselves, and also for us to come up with some really creative strategies, creative ideas for what we're doing in our classrooms as well. So I know that you might be scared about, but please, I would encourage you to go and play with ChatGPT. On day 2, I absolutely loved learning about the superpowers of feedback with Kasey Bell. Kelly is a great friend of mine. We have been chatting to each other for years now as educators, sharing resources with each other and learning from each other. She has just some absolutely amazing strategies that she uses for providing feedback. She's got a simple 3-step process of helping your student to see what they're doing well, what they can improve, but actually having the students then identify what they're going to do to improve what they submitted to you for next time. And she is absolutely amazing. We also had Brendan Lee, another good friend of mine. He spoke about explicit instruction, what that is, and why you really need to be using explicit instruction in your classroom for you to be effective. And it's funny because I talked with Brendan, and then also have people like John Larmer and Suzie Boss, who are like experts in PBL, and McTighe, who's all about deeper understanding and understanding by design. And all of them actually have a level of explicit instruction through everything that they do. So PBL, inquiry-based learning, most types of learning have some form of explicit instruction when they are effective. And so Brendan was fantastic just to kind of talk about the science behind explicit instruction and how it links with cognitive psychology. And he was really fantastic. And I love cognitive psychology. I love learning about how students learn, how we learn, and then leveraging that in the classroom. And really explicit instruction, because explicit instruction isn't just standing at the front and presenting. It's actually about, you explicitly teach something, but you're also checking for understanding the whole way through. There's lots and lots of formative assessments that are happening and differentiation that's going to happen throughout it. And it's actually really, really good to be using with any kind of approach, like overall approach that you also are using in your classroom. Day three, probably my biggest takeaway, because I love productivity, I love effectiveness. I really enjoyed listening to Jeff Bradbury. Jeff is an American educator. He's a coach of a bunch of other teachers in his area, and he showed us I guess it's a website, a software type thing called Notion, and it was amazing to see how he uses that to organize and structure things, and it was just beautiful. So if you've never heard of Notion like me, I hadn't heard of it before he presented, go and check it out. Just search for Notion and education stuff, and it'll come up. It is an amazing tool that we can use in our classrooms, and it was really good to learn about that from him. On day four, it's a 5-day conference, right? But with 3 or 4 presenters each day. But on day 4, Hattie spoke, which was great. He was talking about how we can set up career pathways for excellent teachers. So he wasn't talking about effect sizes. He's talking about how we can actually help really good teachers, be in the classroom, but also have a career pathway in that where they're getting better pay rises, and we're using them to help create other really good teachers, not pulling them out to do more admin work. So that was good to listen to Hattie about that. But my particular thing that I loved learning about was John Bergman came and he spoke about flipped mastery. I have loved flipped learning for a long time. I remember when I first met John Bergman out in Adelaide at a FlipCon, so flipped learning conference, and it was so good to learn from him and his books. And the flipped mastery approach, I've used it quite a few times in my teaching. That's generally the way that I do teach when I am in the classrooms for the last probably 10 years. And I love it. It's fantastic. But he was just going into more detail about his system of how he sets it up, how he has his flipped learning videos that the kids are watching at home, how he sets up multiple different types of assessment that the kids can do to show their competency, right, or mastery before they're allowed to move on to the next thing. But he also helped with the idea. So something that was for me, I often have done, I've done this kind of approach before, and I found that often I have students, they get further and further apart. But he actually sets up this kind of baseline speed that kids need to be moving along with, so that kids don't get to the end and don't have anything. And there's a base level of understanding. So he actually sets up 3 different levels of understanding, so that students, once they get the base, they can move on. But if they want to try again to get a higher level of understanding, then he encourages them to do that, so they actually can move along at a deeper level of understanding, not just the basis. But if you get the basis, you can move on, which means those students who might be lacking in motivation or something like that, they can still get through what we need to be making sure we're getting through as educators in your state. I'm sure most countries are very similar in the sense that they dictate you have to teach this, you've got to teach it in a certain amount of time, and he's managed to find a balance between that with his approach to flipped mastery learning. And so that was fantastic to learn from John. Really, it's always fun to learn from John. He even had some of his students come and talk about the flipped mastery approach and what they liked about it, what it was, and that kind of stuff. Absolutely fantastic. On day 5, the last day of the conference, it was the day I presented, but I'm not going to talk about what I presented. I was just reducing teachers' workload. There's plenty of stuff in this, in the podcast or on this YouTube channel if you're watching it. That's about that. If you don't have my book, you can go grab my book about that. I just was presenting some strategies from my book as well. So if you don't have a copy of that, you can go and get one at teacherspd.net/free WLTM for Work Less, Teach More. You'll land on a page and you can basically get it for free. You just pay for postage. And if you can't remember that, just go to teacherspd.net and it's on there as well. You just click a button and it'll take you to where you can purchase that pay for postage. On day 5, I had Alice Kim, who is a researcher in cognitive psychology, and she was just talking about applying the science of learning, applying cognitive stuff to how we actually teach our students in our classroom. She talked about spaced review, and so how we should be spacing out. We talk about review, but it's about the students actually recalling information that they've learnt previously. And if they can't remember it all, then they kind of review it a bit and learn it. And then again, they'll do that, and spacing that out so that we're not teaching something at one point and then not addressing it again until exams or something like that. But we're actually purposely setting out times when we're going to review information that was learnt earlier so that the students don't forget it, basically. So she talked a lot about that. She talked about explicit connections that we can build for our students between what they currently know and what is the new knowledge, and making sure those connections are really clear. She talks a little bit about how text and next to images, kind of like what happened in sketchnoting, works. And it was amazing. Overall, the 5 days of learning were absolutely amazing. And I've spoken to nearly all of these presenters previously. Most of them have been on the podcast or on a YouTube video with me, and we're chatting about stuff. And they are all amazing educators. They all have fantastic levels of knowledge that they are applying into the classrooms. And it was so joyful to sit down and learn from all that. And I just wanted to share with you guys that, like, what was some of the key things I learned. And there was so much learning that happened. I can't go into all the detail from all the sessions. Like, that's why it was a week-long conference. But I just really wanted to encourage you, if you missed all of that, you can come and get access to the recordings. For that, just go to teacherspd.net/conference and you can see all the information there. But guys, welcome back to 2023. I'm excited. I think 2023 is going to be the best year ever for education. I think it's going to be a year that continues to improve. I hope it's the best year for you as a teacher in your classroom, that you actually have a fantastic year doing what you do, having huge impacts on the students in your classrooms, and just setting them up for life, not just at school, but beyond school, right? We're all about helping our students with the realities of life, not just with education. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for coming back. This is 2023. I cannot wait to dive into more learning with you throughout this year as I do this week by week. Make sure you come back and join me. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. And I look forward to chatting with you again next week. I think I might be interviewing someone next week. So come back and join me then, as I'm going to be talking about motivation actually with a guy called John Berg. So come and join me for that, and have a fantastic day.